Yeah. No. Oh yeah, they don't want more taxes. Oh, that's all. They don't want me.
That's a lot. Good evening, everyone. For those that don't know me, I think most of you people know me. I'm Walter Paul. I'm the Regional District Director for the Slocan Valley area H. And beside me is the Mayor of Slocan, Jessica Lunn, and our Chief Financial Officer. When I say financial officer, is going to do the budget presentation today. So a little bit of a protocol, how we intend to conduct this meeting is to give everybody an opportunity to ask questions. I will be the moderator. So if you want to ask a question or whatever, raise your hand, holler out, Walter, good with that, and then I'll recognize you, and then you can ask your question. Yeah, we'll go through the budget, and we'll stop at different places and say, okay, questions now. So when you have a question, ask the question. Stand up, hopefully, and say, what community you're from, and if you want to share your name with us, that would be great. It would help us, me as a director, but the community you're from, because this budget has defined areas, et cetera, so I've got an idea where the complaints are coming from, or the questions are coming from, or what we can do different. Okay, yeah, it's all yours, and you have Malak as our Chief Financial Officer.
Okay, thank you, Walter. As Walter mentioned, we've got a presentation this evening, so I'll go through that at various points. Feel free to stand up or wave your hand, and hopefully if we can keep it to the end of the slide. We'll stop there, and if you got any questions, we'll do our best to answer them. I just want to confirm if people online can hear us. Can you just somebody unmute? Joe, can you unmute if you can hear us and just let us know?
Yeah, but it's actually working quite well for me anyways.
Okay, Joe. Sorry,
yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
It's working quite well. Yeah.
Okay, good to know. Okay, and just to let everybody know, so that device there is an owl. That's what we use at our board meetings. So it's got a camera, microphone, and speaker in it. So this meeting is being streamed virtually, and just to let people know, so we're not recording it as the regional district, but members of the public have been recording these meetings and putting them up on YouTube. So we don't have any control over that, but so everybody's aware that might be happening this evening. Okay, I'll just bring up the presentation, and we'll get started. It's a little bit behind that. There's a wireless connection to that projector, so it's a little bit slow. We'll take a bit of time. I'll just make that a little larger. There we go. Okay. Let's go to the next slide. So agenda for this evening, we'll just give a quick overview of the regional district and the services that the regional district provides. So we don't make any assumptions about what people's knowledge is. Do look at 2023 and 2024. In a general level, we'll talk about property assessments. They're a little, there's lots of often misunderstanding how they work and how they relate to taxes. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll go service through service, the main services that affect the residents of South Area H and Slocan. On the meeting webpage for this meeting, the financial budget statements have been posted for several days now. So if anybody, I'll be talking about them a bit. And there'll be some exam tomorrow. This presentation will be posted up on that same webpage. So if anybody wants a copy of it, it should be available tomorrow. Okay. Oh, we can't focus that, can we? Yeah, do we know if we can focus this projector or? Not anymore. Not anymore? That's the best.
Would it be difficult if we shut all the lights? It might be more clarity there.
Okay, I mean, it's not terrible, but.
Yeah, it's not really.
No.
Yeah, it's tough to see that.
Okay. Should we go?
Can't make it any bigger, eh?
No, I don't have control of the projector, so nothing I can do here will do that. We'll go plan B and use my projector. Should we try that out? If you guys can't see it, then we'll do that.
We're plan B.
Okay, let's go to plan B.
Well, while he's doing that, we do two budget presentations in the area H. One in the southern portion, where partnered with the village of Slocan and some of the services, and defined areas in the southern portion. When I say southern portion, Slocan and south. In south, the area H extends all the way to Bonington. And I have some longtime residents here that old road to the village of South Slocan down the highway or yeah, that's basically the boundary tomorrow. That's area H, and then we are H north, which is basically anything north of the village of Slocan. That includes some Denver, because area H partners with the villages for the services that we provide in that area. And that area extends all the way to basically past Summit Lake, where if you're familiar, you've traveled that road, but you start going downhill, there's a 3-lane highway, and that's basically the boundary. And then the rest of it is area K, and then the village of Nakusp. And we don't, the only service that we partner with the village of Nakusp in area K is the ski hill that's there by Summit Lake. But we don't tax the area H South residents. This is what I mean by defined areas. So I hope it didn't bore you while he's setting it up.
We shut that projector off.
Yeah.
Maybe I can take a turn too. Hi, everybody, and I just wanted to thank everyone for coming out for the budget presentation. I feel like this meeting,
Good example.
is it still echoing?
Oh, I need this screen.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we'll bring that.
Okay.
We'll bring it back.
through my learning curve, being a director, I found that this meeting in particular, the budget meeting, is a great one to get a core and a better understanding of how things work. So thank you. Thanks everybody for coming out. It's good to see faces. In the past, there has been very few people who show up for this meeting, and I think it's so important. So thank you.
Oh, well, I'll do that, yeah. I just need to kill the audio on here.
Except I don't see anyone from Slocan here. We'll get the questions later. Yeah, exactly. Or when, yeah.
Yeah, just like Jessica said, normally when we hold a budget meeting, we either hold it in the village of Slocan. We alternate between the village of Slocan and Slocan Park. Because there are Lemon Creek residents and there are village residents that want to come to the meeting. And here I insist on having the southern portion of the valley so we can have people that live in, let's say, the village of South Slocan and the Flamer Junction come to this meeting. And then we hold one in New Denver and
Should actually hold a couple in the valley because it is a long spread. Should hold one here and one in Slocan. So you can get a mix of other people because the ones that might not show up here.
yeah, and that's a good idea. The problem with that is we only got one chief financial officer and we've got to hold more than 20 meetings within a certain time frame. Obviously, we don't want to run for the low rate area.
Almost 2 in April.
And, you know, I'm one of the exceptions where most of the other areas only have one meeting. I requested to do from the start, and that's what has been happening. Normally, there are no two meetings per area.
So a lot better without the screen.
Yeah, the screen, the wall might be better.
Well, I can put it.
Yeah, just.
Technology.
Get a straight down picture a little better too. So it's an angle. So Lumber, is there any way to ask you a couple questions now?
I can, while he's setting up, whatever, sure, go ahead, or I can stay behind and answer any questions.
So I can ask this now. Why is it that fire halls now need a assistant deputy chief? Like, why the extra expense at our pocketbook?
Okay, so are you talking about each fire hall having an assistant deputy fire chief, or are you talking about the regional?
Oh, I'm talking about fire hall.
So the fire halls, it's always been that way, and that's affordable. Yeah,
There was never a deputy assistant, an assistant to the deputy chief.
okay, so let me back up a little bit. Each fire hall gets an allotted amount of money, regardless of how many deputies they have or whatever. No, we're talking about fire halls, not the regional district. Okay.
Well,
Each
because-
fire hall can have 5 lieutenants, 10 captains or whatever, but there's only so much money allocated towards officers, period. And how they split it up, I've left it up to the fire chief to If you want to have two captains, two deputy chiefs or whatever, that's up to you. But you only get a certain allotment for your officers and you get a certain allotment for the fire chief.
And so after the regional district, did they have to hire an assistant to the deputy chief, and the deputy chief is actually supposed to act for the chief?
Well, there's a lot more than that. And that started off when I first got elected. There was myself and the community services person, Joe Shirko, who was online. We looked after the 4 firewalls in Area H. With additional training that was required, et cetera, they decided that, because we have 18 firewalls throughout the whole regional district, and not all the firewalls were organized well or whatever, so they decided they would hire a fire chief. And as it happens, you probably where he goes out, oh, that's too much work for me. I need an assistant. And then they hire an assistant fire chief, an assistant fire chief. Well, I need a secretary. And then no, we've got now operations and we've got training. So we need a fire chief or a deputy fire chief for training and operations. Now the province says, well, you should do building inspections. So we need a deputy chief for public building inspections. We're not talking public buildings, they're the one that we're in. So that's up and come. So,
So that's downloading, sorry for interrupting.
yeah, you're right.
That's downloading
Absolutely.
the responsibility of the RBCK and the local region onto the fire hall, so that's not their job. And then it comes out of their pocket because now these wages are all being paid for these people.
Absolutely. What happens is the fire commissioner for all of BC, whether he was required by law, I don't know why, he came down and said, all volunteer fire departments shall have to have a similar training that paid fire departments have. And that's indoor and outdoor. And you're probably aware that, your husband was involved in fire. So now, what happens is, before it used to be fire practice on a Wednesday or a Tuesday night, everybody comes down there, camaraderie, you get together, 2-3 hours of your practice, you go back in the fire hall, and some fire halls had alcohol there, like beer, they have 1 or 2 beer, and they sit there and discuss, what happens. Their regulations came in, there no alcohol because of an accident that happened somewhere in the province or whatever, the person drank after practice, whatever. So alcohol was excluded. People come down there. Now fire practice is no longer that camaraderie that you used to have. They still have they drink their coffee and they go home. And now the fire commission says, well, that's inadequate training. We need outdoor, we need indoor, same thing as paid fire department. So now you have to train your volunteers. And the volunteers were glad to be volunteers and come down once a week and, practice stuff like that. But now they have to spend their weekends in the fire hall. And they're volunteers. They've got a day job. We want to get paid for doing that. So, and that's how blow it out.
Weekends, what do they have to spend their weekends for now?
For training, because they need now indoor and outdoor
They
training.
get paid for going out on calls too.
Yes, they get paid for going out and calls too. And right now, currently, they're getting paid less than minimum wage,
Just over minimum wage.
just slightly over minimum.
So another question regarding fire hall.
And the demand is, we want to get paid a living wage. The living wage is a lot more. And then the fire chief says, well, if you're going to be paying them, we want to get paid more. And it just keeps going. And when you take a look at it, we know fire protection is a valuable service for our areas. We had a house fire there up in Crestova. We had one out in Crescent Valley. And I hear they had one out in Winlow a little while ago.
Where's that Paris?
In Paris. So, it is, plus what it helps is your insurance coverage. If you're in an unprotected area, call your insurance broker and find out how much you have to pay for insurance. We're in a semi-protected area, so we get a considerable amount of deduction, and we don't set those rates. The insurance company sets those.
Oh, yeah, they're close.
So I think we're going into the other stuff.
Okay, all right, apologies for the delay, technology didn't quite work, so, hopefully everybody can read that plugin doesn't get in the way too much. If it does, we can look at lowering the screen again.
Can they hear us?
Can people online still hear us? We've made a few changes here.
Yes, I can, yeah.
Awesome, thank you, Joe. Okay, so there's the agenda, so we'll move forward through the presentation. So just a bit of a preamble that this budget is still in a draft state. So the budget process started last September, gone through various iterations, a whole slew of committee and commission meetings, meetings of directors, staff, 2 board meetings specific to the budget. So based on all of that activity, we published a draft budget last week. So this presentation is based on that. The final adoption, and I'll talk about that in a bit, of the budgets at the March 21st board meeting. So there's still ongoing committee commission meetings, meetings with directors, as well as these public information sessions for public input. So there is still potential for change over the coming weeks. So a bit about the budget process. And so I've just talked about that. So the board has had 2 open board meetings, full day meetings specific to the budget, where we discussed various services. As mentioned, probably a couple dozen committee and commission meetings to deal with parks, rec, utilities, and resource recovery and transit. There's a couple local service committees, Creston and Caslo, and then as well as directors and other participants. So once again, the process will conclude on March 21st for the final adoption of the budget, which has to be submitted to the province by March 31st. Okay, so the regional district services model, there's 186 services. Roughly, they could be categorized or grouped in the categories there. Governance and administration, so that's basically the board of directors. And administration is finance, IT, HR, and corporate administration, as well as the CEO's office. Resource recovery, which is waste, recycling, organics. So everybody across the regional district participates in that. Recreation and parks, so there's probably a couple dozen services relating to that. Fire protection, which we just discussed a bit. Sustainability, development, planning, and land use. Building inspection, water systems, and then a bunch of services to fund societies, organizations that provide other services such as libraries, communities, halls, museums, and recreation. One thing to note, we won't go into all the details about the services and how they function, but each service is accounted for individually. So each service needs to stand on its own. So the big difference between the regional district and municipality is in a regional district, each service has its own set of accounting, its own set of funding, and we can't move funds from one service to the other. So if there's a surplus or deficit, that has to stay inside the service. Versus a municipality, they've got more or less, it's not exactly, they got one big pot of money and they could direct it where they need to, whether it's for roads or sidewalks or whatever other service they're providing. So that's the big the difference there. So just a couple maps of the regional district. On the left-hand side is without the electoral area boundaries. So that's the entire regional district. On the right with the electoral boundaries, electoral area boundaries. So area H is the purple blue area right in the middle, and with the 3 municipalities highlighted there: Slocan, New Denver, and Silverton. December, or over the course of the last year, so back up a bit, the new board was elected in the fall of 2022. So over the 2023 year, the board participated in facilitated strategic planning sessions. And so a strategic plan was finalized in December. So these are the key priorities of the board, which will help drive initiatives and projects and work plans for the regional district. So under each one of these priorities, I'll go through them all. There's a set of 6 to 8 objectives. So this strategic plan, if it's not already, will be available on our website probably by the end of this week.
Is this whole thing on the website too?
This presentation will be on the webpage for this meeting tomorrow, by the end of tomorrow. So this will be available then, along with the financial budget package, which I think was posted there several days ago. So quick review of 2023. So spending on wages, benefits, and most other operating expenses was significantly under budget for 2023. Wage spending was lowest because many positions remained unfilled for parts of the year. So if somebody leaves in the middle of the year, takes a job elsewhere, it takes a while to hire somebody again. There's a 2 or 3 or longer month recruiting process. And so as that occurs, there's a surplus generated there. Also, if it's significant enough, we've got services are curtailed or cut back, projects are postponed, or other staff are stretched to cover as a result of those reduced staffing levels. And as well, the utilities construction crew was disbanded last year due to labor shortages. So as everybody's probably aware, it's been a fairly competitive labor market over the last several years. And it's definitely had some impacts on the regional district, including, ability to recruit and retain staff. However, counter to this, those savings, user fees and other sales of service revenue items, for example, building permits, were also significantly under budget for 2023. So we had lower expenses, but we also had lower revenues. Capital projects were also came under budget, but that's offset by reduced borrowing and transfers from reserves to fund the projects. And so if there's any surplus or deficit in any service, that's carried forward to the previous year to either reduce or increase taxation in future years. A little bit about the budgeting process. We cannot budget a deficit for any surplus or even a surplus. So each service has to have basically a zero balance between revenues and expenses for the year.
Okay, so that's the 2 questions, Maggie, and then.
So, but it's been in the budget and for hiring staff that is not even staff, because they don't know whether they're going to hire them or not. But there's 3 that I remember coming from the budget meeting that they're going to budget for. So that's going to increase our taxes there. And so where's that money going to go? Going to just sit there?
No,
Until they decide to hire somebody, because they just keep hiring and hiring, like assistants to assistants in the budget. We have this person, now they need an assistant, and that assistant needs an assistant. That's getting overinflated here.
okay, I'm not aware of any assistance to assistants, but so what maybe I wasn't clear about that is, so all the positions that we budget for are approved by the board. And so what happens is during the year, if somebody leaves, there's a period of time that we're recruiting for that we're not paying their wages. So we can't plan for anybody leaving. Each service has to stand on its own. So if we say, well, on average, there's 10 to 20 positions to the regional district that are open at any one time that we're recruiting for. So if we say, reduce the budget and said, okay, we're going to put an allowance for this people leaving. Well, we can't predict who's going to leave and when they're going to leave. And so if we don't budget for those wages, then we end up in a quandary of not being able to pay people's salaries. So we have to budget for a fully staffed regional district.
Yeah, but I remember at the board meeting there in Nelson, they were budgeting for 3 more positions that aren't even positions yet.
So the three positions that were budgeted for were, there was 3 new resource recovery supervisors were approved last September, October. So in the budget, so the staff that were hired are going to be starting this month or in April. I think there's a range. So for those positions, when we know they're not going to start on day 1, we don't budget for January 1. We'll make an estimate then if we know we're going to be hiring for a new position, and we'll start them. The budget will start them in the month that we think they're going to start.
We get paid an awful lot of money for a position they're doing.
Okay, can we go on to Mike now?
Yeah, hi, thanks for coming here. I have just a question. So you talked about each service being on its own, and you talked about the emphasis on being able to, but it's not clear for me. I just want to get you right to the other conflicting information. Do you actually know if you're over under budget already for 2023 or do you not?
Overall, we're in a surplus, so we're under budget
So
for.
you do know the surpluses at this point in time?
Yeah, we have estimated surplus. They aren't final yet.
Okay, I do understand.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So if somebody comes to you and says, we'd like to use some of last year's surplus for this year's budget, you're not going to say to us, well, we don't know those numbers. Because I got to tell you, that's the feedback I'm getting.
No, if you look at the budget, the service statements in here, there is a line on each service that has our forecast surplus.
Okay.
Yeah, for the account numbers 49100 prior surplus. And so the estimates, our latest estimates for that are are included in the budget statement.
Is that for each individual service?
Yeah, for each individual service. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
About these utility construction crews disbanded. So what were they doing? How much have they lost? Because they must have been doing something and it got stopped. And it seems like there'd be a loss of some kind.
Yeah, no, good question. So there's, we weren't able to hire a crew last year, so that crew did not function last year. So what basically remains is some equipment that we need to sell, and we haven't sold that yet. So we're hoping that we'll be able to recover our investments in that equipment. And so we'll know better by this year where, once we sell that equipment, where it ends up. And then any gain or loss of that will flow through as the utilities overhead.
So what were they doing? These utilities?
So in previous years, they would go out. So we have, they're mainly focused on water systems. So there's about 20 water utilities throughout the regional district, which require various levels of work, including mainly what this crew would be doing is replacing pipe, water pipe. So digging out old pipe and putting new pipe in, or expanding systems. So it was really, the difficulty was in hiring people for basically what amounted seasonal work at a cost level that was effective.
So I'm just wondering, so if this is the disbanded, then who's going to be reimbursed?
Contractors.
Contractors, but I mean, do you want to see any or?
Yeah, so if the water utility is a regional district water utility, then it would be a contracted service. It would go up for bid depending on the size of the project.
So we're going to be standing for
Last year was the first year it didn't function.
but the maintenance will continue.
The maintenance of the water systems will continue. So they would only take on a number of projects. So if there was 20 projects for the water utilities over the course of the year, this utilities crew might work on 2 or 3 of them.
Is there any provincial interaction there? Is the provincial government?
Yeah, can I respond to that? question that you're asking pertains to regional district owned water systems, not the irrigation water system that's here in Slocan Park or the improvement district that's in other areas. They are managed and owned by the regional district. And the construction crews were hired to reduce contracted costs. And because it didn't materialize, so it's not carrying. And I think Mayor London has a.
Yeah, just to expand on what Director Popoff had said, it was a pilot project to see if it was more cost effective to hire internally regional district staff to do this work, or if it makes sense to do contracted service. So after it had got moved forward for a number of years, staff came back with the report, and they recommended that that it would be more cost effective to disband and not hire internally. And there were challenges with staffing as well, just because I think it was actually seasonal. And so they just couldn't keep the staff up. So the recommendation was to move back to contracted services and more fun.
Go ahead.
Okay, so we'll talk a bit about assessment changes. Overall, in general, there was smaller increases in 2024 compared to 2023. So the 2024 property assessments are based on July 2023 property values. So does that mean taxation will go up or down by the same amount as your assessment change? No, it doesn't. We'll talk about that in a bit. And one thing to know about assessments, they can be divided into market and non-market change. So when we look at assessment change for an area or municipality as a whole, you might say, oh, it goes up 13%, but that could be divided into market change, which means that's what is driven by the general real estate market and general prices or increases of homes. And then there's a non-market change, which means there's more construction activity and the tax base grew because of that. So if, I'll show in a bit, if there's a 14% increase in the assessed value of properties, a percent of that assessed increase assessment increase might be because of new construction. And then the average homeowner an existing property might be seeing a 12% increase. Yeah.
I have a question and a problem with that. So I live in Cristobal, and a little house on the corner from us sold in the last couple of years. And the real estate played a real game with the lady that bought it. And they drove the price up by telling each person that there was 5 or 6 people interested in this property. And they end up causing them to have a little bit of a real estate money war on this property. And it got sold way above what the actual value of the place is. And it seems to be happening a lot. It's time that maybe somebody looks into that. Because the real estate seems to be playing a real game around here. And the only reason I found that all out is we got to know the lady that bought the house, and we started to talk to some of the other people that were going to purchase the house. And it was really interesting the things that are being put in what's going on.
Okay, so can I take a stab at answering that? There is a real estate board. Filed a complaint with the real estate board, exactly what you mentioned. I live in Crestova too. Everybody else's property had dropped by -1%. Mine went up by 10%. And that's probably as a result of what's happened there. And there are other places that sold above market value. But we, as a regional district, have no control over that whatsoever.
Yeah, so that's, next slide, I think will show it. So the assessments are calculated by a provincial body, the BC Assessment Authority. So the other, besides what Walter said about the real estate board, you can challenge your assessments, but that has to be filed by January 31st. So I know that people have been successful in doing that. And if but you have to have a good case and about why you think your property didn't increase the amount that it did. So, but that deadline has now passed. Okay, so this talks a bit about it. So how are annual property taxes for the regional district or property owners calculated? So each one of those services, we do up a budget for that. And so we do up all the expenses and all the revenues, and we carry forward any surplus or deficit from the previous year. And then that helps us calculate what tax requisition is required for each service, basically, so it balances out to zero. So we do that for each one of those services and figure out the tax requisition. And then separately from that, the BC Assessment Authority does all the property assessments. They figure out all the property values for raw land, residential properties, commercial farm, etc. And then that's how the tax rate for each individual service is calculated. Is basically how much requisition is required for that service divided by the total value of property assessments that are participating in that service. So the difference between the regional district and municipality here, the municipality does this for their whole municipality as a whole, puts everything in one bucket, but the regional district divides this into 180 different tax rates for the 180 different services. And then, so that's tax rate for each service is multiplied for the assessed value for each individual property that's participating in that service. And then that'll come up the property tax for each individual property related for that service. And then I'll show a table later on. You then have to add up all the services to come up with your total tax from the regional district.
I have a question. So
Yes.
if you don't use a service, you still getting taxed for it. It doesn't work out. For years, we have been taxed for this TV service that we've never been able to use. And we don't do it. Yeah.
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 And it's volunteer.
And, it's like, and transit, well, I don't use transit. Yeah. But I'm being taxed for it.
Yeah, no, I guess it depends on the service. So as far as transit, that's generally how transit works throughout British Columbia. Everybody pays into it, and there's a split. So transit, actually, the government, the provincial government, we're part of the provincial government, pays for half the service. The regional district requisitions another portion, and then the bus fares are capped at a certain rate, and that revenue goes in there as well. So if it was on a purely user-based system, we would not have transit in this area. And that's one of the decisions and one of the principles behind a transit service.
So what does this TV society do?
Okay, well, let me touch the TV Society. This was before my time. But what happened is when a service is established, it goes to referendum for a defined area. And people vote on it. And if it's passed, then the regional district established that service. In this particular case, it is the TV Society at that time is responsible for defining the area and came to the regional district and says, look, we want basically a grant to provide that service to the residents. And I'm not too sure whether there was a referendum done, but if that happened today, I'd go out there just like what we did the mosquito referendum. If that passed, even if you weren't bitten by mosquitoes, but it passed in your area, you'd still have to pay. So that's how service is established.
Is there any way to do a referendum to take it out?
Yes, there is, but that has to be, basically, you do a referendum, there has to be enough response from the residents requesting that service be discontinued.
Okay.
Questions back there?
And so is that why that percentage-wise, a municipality, resident of the municipality would pay more taxes than someone in our area? Because they have more services to the municipality than they would the same.
I don't know if that's a fair generalization, because the regional district, we might have some services that they don't, right? So not all municipalities are equal. So for each service, in most cases where the municipality and the rural residents share service, they're going to pay the same rate per thousand for most services, but some services have different funding models, and they might be, there might be a population factor in there, but in the most cases, for the same service, a municipal resident will pay the same as a local residents. For instance, waste services and recreation services where they are shared. So I don't know, Mayor Lund, if you want to address that.
In my introduction, I said I don't know that there's Slocan books here, but we usually hear from them when the tax bill goes out, and then they go, and then we usually have copies of this presentation that explains that yes, we have our municipal taxes, so that's paying for our CEO, our public works, and street claims, but then we're participants in the resource service, transit service, fire service, and those are regional district services, and that's why I'm a municipal director on regional districts, representing, because we are participants that are of regional nature.
So just to expand on your question, the local government act governs how we fund the service. So the statement that I made might not be exactly accurate, but that would have to be okay. From what I understand is if you went to a referendum to establish a service, my understanding is you have to do a referendum.
And what about us paying for police on our taxes in the valley here? Isn't that for Nelson?
That's a good question.
The regional district is not involved in policing services.
My understanding is municipalities have to pay for that service. I don't know if you have to have a certain size, I'm assuming. And rural districts, we don't. That's basically the taxation that we pay to the province.
So the police service thing on our taxes is their province.
It's a provincial taxation. Anyway. Let's respect our comments to the budget.
All right.
Yeah, we've got a lot to go through, so we're getting a little bit stuck here. So.
Okay. Well, just a little bit. Yeah, it's not going to get too much better. So lots of numbers on here, but this is for the entire regional district. Basically, this is the assessment change. So for area H, the total property assessment in total is 4%. And that 4% could be divided into 3% increase in property values due to market, and one and a bit percent due to non-market. So that's basically new construction and renovations. And then the village of Slocan had a much larger assessment increase, so 13%. Most of that was market change. So the interesting thing to note about that is where there's a shared service between a rural area and in this case, a village or municipality. And one of them, the assessments increased by a greater amount, then in that year, they'll take a greater share of the cost of the service. So it's a shared service such as fire. The village of Slocan will take the residents there that will, in total dollars, will end up paying more for that fire service at a greater increase than the rural residents. And then vice versa. So if it was the other way, if area H had a greater assessment increase, then for any service where they share with the municipality, then they would see a greater increase in taxes on that. So that we call that assessment shift. And so that happens when you've only got two areas participating, and then also over the sub-region, like for instance, waste services. If one area municipality had a greater increase in assessment, they'll take a greater share of the cost for that. And so there's a bit of ebb and flow back and forth in that over time.
Is that the change of our assessment for this year?
On average, yes, for the average homeowner in each area and the regional district as a whole.
The market change or the total change?
The total change. So the market change and the non-market split that total change into market and non-market. Right, so some areas, for instance, K, which is the rural area around the cusp, had fairly significant level of new development and construction. About over 20% of their assessment increase is because of construction. Okay, this is basically a bar chart is based on the previous table. So the blue lines are, or blue bars are the 1 year percentage change in assessment for each area or municipality. The orange bars are going back 8 years. So if you look at 1 year, you can see that the assessment change range is anywhere from -2 up to almost 15%. So about a 16% range, which is quite a wide range. But if you look at the 8-year average, there's only about a 5%, if you know, Slocan's a bit of an outlier, but about a 5% change. So over the course of time, the average is more tightly confined than over the previous year. And if you look back 2 or 3 years ago, Nelson and the surrounding areas would have been on the far end of that chart. So Nelson and other areas would have been there. So now as construction development and people see cheaper or less expensive properties in rural areas, then there's demand there. And that's driven some of the larger assessment increases in the more rural areas of municipalities over the last several years. Okay, this is getting back to Slocan area H, so 13% increase in Slocan and 4 in H. Okay, so this is one of the tax requisition schedules for, so this is for area H, Slocan, Slocan Valley. And so this is available, this is in the budget workbook that's on the webpage for this meeting. And basically what it shows is the change from 2023, both in assessment and as well as the total tax requisition for each service that everybody in area H participates in. So every property pays into all of these services. So then it points to a percentage change of about almost 7% increase in total requisition. But if we remember, there was just over 1% in new development. So that's about a 6% average increase in property tax for area H residents for this set of services. So if you were to look into this booklet, you would also see there's not enough for me to show it here. There's a list of another 10 or so services that relate to defined areas. So for instance, there's a couple water utilities that might only have, I don't know, 10 or 20 homes participating in it. So I'm not showing all of those services below here. So this table basically then also shows the taxation rate per thousand, which I discussed earlier, which is basically the assessment, the requisition divided by the assessment. So that's the tax rate per thousand each one of the, for 23 and 24.
So what does that say under the rate there for 2024?
0.842.
0.842, that's cent.
No, that's, dollars per thousand of assessment. Per $1,000 assessment. So if a home's worth 500,000, then, it would be roughly be paying, $420,000. Sorry, $420 of taxes.
It more.
No, in total. For regional district taxes. And I'll have some tables, there's a couple of bar graphs in the end that will speak to that.
So just before you can get off of there, off that screen, is those are the services that all of Area H pays taxation, not defined areas. So the next one following it.
Yes.
I would like to know what we're paying every year for legal fees. What the RDC can pay for legal fees every year? Because we have this never-ending HP Mine situation and legal fees and whatever. And we have, I'm sure sometimes we have disputes and labor disputes and things. So what kind of, how much of our money is going to labor and lawyer fees every year?
It really varies year to year. I don't have the number at the top of my head. It depends what happens that year. So HB Mines is in the central sub-region for waste services. So Area H is in the west. So Area H residents aren't paying into HB Mines.
Okay, so which area gets the nice bill?
Well, it's not a particular area. Resource recovery is split up into three different areas. East Resource Recovery, south of Preston, that area, and they pay taxation for their resource recovery. We have Central Resource Recovery, which is Nelson and up the Freaky Lake all the way up your agenda, and that's called Central, including Salmo. And West Resource Recovery is basically Castlegar and everything in the area, in the Cuspin area. So they, if there are legal fees associated with Central Resource Recovery, they cover that cost out of that service, the participants in that service. So in other words, Area H is not paying for legal fees for Central Resource Recovery.
Okay, but, an organization like the
So that'll be a question for that part of the budget presentation, nothing to do with us here.
Okay, but
And so I'm pretty sure dissatisfied with that, bring that question to the board, not to this budget meeting, because we can't answer that.
you must have a category for legal fees.
There.
Come under general administration.
Legal fees will be related to the service that the legal charges relate to. So you would have to look at each individual service. So in this package, there is an expense line there, account 54010 legal. So you can go through here and see all the legal costs for all these services. But keeping in mind that not every resident in Area H participates in each of these services. So you'd have to work out which services you participate, add up those legal fees, and then you're only paying a portion of that because, for instance, general administration, the entire regional district pays into that, into that service. So as Area H resident, you're probably paying less than 10%, probably 5% into general administration. So with legal fees, I'm looking here about $25,000. You're paying a fairly small amount.
And that was it for the previous years as well.
Yes, our previous year budgets and statements are available online. So the person can go and
With that category,
legal, all our budgets. So each budget, so to see what the actual costs were for each year, you would look into the next year's budget. There's a column there. So right now it's in just draft mode because we haven't completed 2023 actuals. But once we finalize the 2023 budget, publish it, the actual costs for the the 24 budget, the actuals for 2023 will be available in the consolidated budget statement for each service. So this is Village of Slocan, and the services it participates in. So most of these are either shared across the region, sub-regionally, or with Area H. And so Slocan is as well seeing an increase per 1,000. And actually a much larger total dollar change in requisitions, mainly driven by its larger increase in assessment. So on a per 1,000 basis, the relative increases in tax per 1,000 are quite a bit smaller. So Village of Slocan, 0.55%, and Area H, 2.4%. Okay, and then, so this table again is for the entire regional district, and it lists up the taxation change from each area and municipality. Again, so Silverton is actually will have a reduction in total requisition, and then Area D, which is surrounding Caslim, goes up to Meadow Creek, and Argenta has the largest increase of about 14. So that's total taxation change. You can deduct, again, about 1% or 2% off of that for an average for existing property.
How much time do you have?
So the number for on average for the regional district as a whole, for property owners is about a 7.9% increase. But again, that the actual range is quite a bit wider than that. So it really depends where you live, and your increase or decrease could vary quite a bit from your neighbor depending on assessment changes.
So overall, for Area H, it's 7% change.
7 in total requisition and about 6 for existing property owners. So 1% of that is driven by would be picked up by new construction.
So that's 13.
No, 6 would be for 7 is for everybody, including people residents who build new homes. So if you take out the new construction, on average, it's 6%. So somebody who's constructed a new home, their tax is going to go up by a factor 5 or 10 or more. So if we exclude them, the average drops to about 6. Okay, so we'll jump into 2024. So just as I mentioned, so the overall requisition increase in total is about 9.3, but if we exclude the new construction, we're at about 7.9% for the average. So the CPI increase or consumer price index increase for staff and salaries and director stipends for this year is 6.2%. So this is a catch up from prior years because the calculation method that's either in bylaw or in the staff terms and conditions of employment is basically a 2-year average. So when we were asked to compare that 6.2 increases going back, is the CPI increase an equitable increase? So we looked back both 7 and 24-year periods. And looking at the public sector, basically it's matched inflation over both periods. Other thing to note is inflation and supply chain constraints will continue to have a cost impact across most services and projects. And in many cases, the purchases actually exceed the published consumer price index. I talked with I met with our capital projects manager today, and he's saying, yeah, it's even now prices and things and services For instance, PVC pipe and such are still increasing 20 or 30%. So when we see a published number, 6% or 3% of CPI, that means a very small basket related to consumers. A lot of our contractors now who have heavy investments in equipments and are borrowing equipment are coming back to us and saying, my payments have gone up, my borrowing's gone up because interest rates have come up. This is what I need to charge. So contractor rates are not going up 3% or 6% per year. They're going up 10 or 20 and in many instances. And that's, that's driving up a lot of the cost increases. So as mentioned, so interest rate increases, so they're putting pressure not only on our contractors and other services, but including the regional district borrows to buy for its capital projects or to buy things like fire trucks and other equipment. So that's put pressure, increased both short-term and long-term borrowing costs. On the other hand, there's a partial offset by increased investment income, but that increased investment income flows into reserves. So hopefully those reserves try at least keep up somewhat with inflation. So they're there to cover future investments in capital. So definitely interest rates has affected us. And then as well this year, one of the big projects or initiatives that we've been working on the last several years is an asset management program, which is going to be based. We're expecting an external consultant's report in the next few months that will drive some of our longer-term planning around the regional district assets.
So we do have a question here, Mike.
Yes.
I think I do have a very quick question.
Sure.
Is that documented somewhere where those investments are?
Not where those particular, I could speak to that. So the investment income is documented in our financial plan. So we're going to make a change this year. Before it all used to show in general admin, but then it would get spread over all the reserves, over all the services. And so we're now going to be showing that investment income in each service individually. But that income is a revenue item on the top. On the bottom, it's a contribution to reserves, so they net each other out. Yeah. So getting back to our investments, so the regional district's investment process is largely guided by provincial legislation, the Community Charter, and the Local Government Act. So we can only invest in very safe investments. So that's GICs and high interest savings accounts. So roughly how our investments are split, we've got about $10 million in the latter GICs. So every 6 months, we roll them over into the latest GICs. So we still have some investments that are 4 or 5 years old that are only making 1% right now. The latest ones are making about 5%. And then last year we negotiated with our financial institution. And so we have quite a fairly large bank accounts. Most of our investments sits in there because we receive all our taxation in one big lump sum in August, and then it basically goes away by June. So you can't really put that into long-term investments. So we negotiated a high interest rate. So that right now we're getting over 5% on our cash accounts right now with our investment.
Yeah. Okay, so that went that way.
So what if the last negotiating agreements with the municipal union employees on rate increases, salaries? When was that last negotiated?
I believe 2022, and so the negotiations will be going on this year.
And it was agreed to keep up with the CPI.
So there's a difference there. So we have exempt staff who are not part of the union. So our terms and conditions of employment when somebody's hired is their wages would keep up with the inflation. So we have agreements with all our employees that their wages will keep up with inflation. And then for union employees, those are based on negotiations. So our union employees are mainly at our major rec centers in Castlegar, Nelson, and Preston.
Okay, do you have a sense of the optics for the 6.2% raise for young families that are having a real hard time because we're going to the grocery store? The 6.2% raise is, I don't know, I don't think that's a great optic right now, in this time, this economy. And so are you aware of it? It's having trickle knowing that. Is anyone aware? People are really struggling. Young families are, you know, the food that they can buy now isn't the same as last year, or the year before.
And they don't have any increase.
Yeah, so just to respond to that, the union employees, it's negotiated. So we negotiate, everybody wants, that's the other side of the coin is that inflation is like about 10% or higher than 6.2. And if you pay your employee only 6.2, you say, well, you're not going to inflation, so you lose your employees. They go somewhere else where they can get higher rates. So it is a struggle. And union negotiations are union negotiations. We're not privy to talk about union negotiations. What we're talking about is our staff that we're paying the CPI index and we're agreeing to that. But that's averaged out over so many years.
But 62.2 is average over how many years?
So that 6.2 is based on basically a 2-year average calculation. So as inflation was increasing, staff was getting, so generally when you see a published number, it's based on 1 year. So when inflation was 8% 2 years ago, regional district staff received a rate of about 4%. So this year it's 6, even though the published rates are now less than that because it's the average of the last 2 years. So this is basically a catch-up year. So I do appreciate the optics of it. But it's part of an employment agreement, and regional district has had difficulty recruiting and retaining employees over the last several years, and because it's been a competitive job market. So if we were to break an agreement with our employees or have wages that don't keep up with inflation, it makes it very difficult, or even more difficult to recruit and retain employees as Director Popovic mentioned.
And a good example is the volunteer fire departments. People are saying, like you said, why are you paying wages for volunteers or whatever? Well, we're having problems staffing and I think Winlaw is one of the problem areas that we're having. Slocan is a problem area. Preston Valley is I don't know why, but you have a lot of volunteers. And there's other fire halls that have the same problems. And if you don't pay your fire chiefs, what they ask, they resign, you don't have a fire chief. So it's a hard issue to deal with.
So the CAO, who determined his wage?
The board.
The board determined his wage. You make over 200,000 a year. That's $16,000 a month. And he still gets a wage increase. Now, if you put that wage increase on my pension, that's pennies. And they take an average all across Canada to determine what the cost of living is.
So the CPI this is based on BC CPI.
So we have a question.
You have a question?
Well, I was just when you brought up the fire thing again. So the fire that just happened for so long, people are having issues with this too. 6 fire trucks went past my house, 4 first responders, 2 police cars, 4 other vehicles for 1 house fire. How much of us are taxes that you paid to that? I would like to know what that cost up there for that fire. It would be nice to see that broken down so all of us can see, because that also is becoming a problem. You don't need to call up 3 fire departments for 1 house that they end up watching it and burn down. And we're seeing it all the time. I've seen this in the last 5 years. So back to what you're saying, Walter, it's great that we have this and we have the volunteer people, but somebody is cashing in on this shit.
So we have mutual aid.
Yeah, what?
Mutual aid, what happens is the fire is in Presto, but it's a Preston Valley Fire Department response. We don't always have a full crew. So then we bring in people from Passmore to support that. And we bring in people, I don't know whether they came from Paris or Beasley.
Yeah,
And they are taxed differently. We don't pay for their taxes.
okay,
They come and help us out.
6 fire trucks? I live on the.
You know, I can't answer that question because it is a fire. There's safety required. Roads have to be blocked off, no people there, et cetera. You have delivery of water. We have only one water tender. When the tender goes away, we have no water there to put out the fire. So you bring in another water tender from another area while this one's gone, and you do a shuffle, just like what they used to do with the bucket shuffle in the good old days. And this is why you bring in mutual aid from other fire departments. And that's about how much I know about that. That's a good question or whatever. I mean, maybe our fire chief can, if you give them a call, he can maybe respond to you directly and tell you why they had so many fire trucks there or whatever. But I don't think, I trust our fire chief to make a good decision on our behalf and the people whose house was being burned down or not being burned down, on fire.
Oh, yeah. You feel that, I should know that we see it all the time, I talk to people, and they say, bullshit going on all the time.
But so if you figure it's bullshit, call the fire chief. And he will respond to you directly. It's Ryan Durand, and he's in Preston Valley, and he's a very good fire chief, very reasonable, and I believe he'll be glad to talk.
And I think we do have a slide on the cost.
Yeah, we'll talk about that for a bit.
Would be specific to the one that, or.
Okay, oh, more questions? Yes.
Just to go back to the price of the CDA, maybe this is the question for you to ask. What would be the cost of a CDA in a small city or just compared to $1 million salary?
I don't have the numbers for that, but there are CAOs they're not inexpensive. Our CAO in Slocan is not the same defense, but for a tiny operation with a smaller tax base. However, the investment in ours, like, you want to pay enough so we can keep some of it. And I believe it did come to the board, and we did receive that information about the average rate of CAO, and it was based on, and if you realize the background. So if you had a CAO coming in who was just starting out, likely that would be a lot. You pay a lot less. If you have some background, or yeah. But it's, yeah, 6 figures even for some municipalities. That's why I hold on to our CAO. And it's just because what we've seen in the past too is quite often with the smaller municipalities, you'll get somebody who's just ready to retire or somebody who's new, learns, and then leaves. And we've had that for a while. We've had amazing success. And so I'm training to out and then time. That's so good to pay. But if you use CAO, you use especially. I'm not really answering your question, but yeah, as a comparison, you have to look at the size of the organization. So the regional district is very complex, and our total budget is pretty significant. So we need
Okay. So just brief, get in touch, going back to the strategic plan. Oh, did I? Oh, I thought I talked about the asset management. Yeah, so we're going through a project management study right now. So we're expecting an external consultants report in the coming months. So they look at all the assets in the regional district and how to best plan for their upkeep and replacement looking forward 20, 30, or 40 years. So it's a fairly large initiative across the country and a recent, it's really become a large area of focus for municipalities and local governments to go through an asset management process, which would not only drive projects initiatives, but potentially bylaw.
Where do you post the consultant fees?
So the consulting fees of that will be in general administration. But what we were able to do, so last year, the provincial government gave basically gave out funds to local governments under the Growing Communities Fund. So the regional district received $4 million. So $100,000 of that being allocated to towards the consulting fees to produce this report.
And how many consultants are there?
There's one consulting organization. I'm not sure how many staff are actually working on this.
And this is a new thing, this hasn't been done in previous years?
We've done subsets of that. So we've looked at our, for instance, our fire halls, and we've done assessments on them. But as far as an overall organizational asset management plan, we have not done one to this level.
You look forward to that, why all of a sudden?
It's just, again, a push by the provincial government and the federal government, and to that municipalities and local governments go through a thorough asset management process.
And to what end?
To what end? To make sure that there's a plan in place to upkeep and replace assets over the longer term.
May I ask?
Sure. Yeah.
I think the reason I think you're finding that you're asking these kind of critical questions is because I'm pretty sure that you as the Legion have been put in areas and taking the stuff to be doing for a longer, this is like everyone is keen. So we're really asking the root cause. Why all of a sudden is the federal and provincial government asking for these things? Why is it so important to them? Because we're asking you really the thing. And thing like, what is it for them, what's the goal, as opposed to just following these projects?
Yeah, so I'll take a stab at that. I don't think you watch the news. A good example is the Suez.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so they, and this is just my version, I don't know if it's true or not, but they have been reducing their taxation and not replacing stuff that should have been replaced and ongoing. So the idea is to establish a reserve, so when something goes bad, like say a water pipe, that you have enough funds to replace it rather than increasing taxation. So that's the general overall purpose.
Yes, that's a good idea for a general plan of the reason.
I don't know if they mismanagement or not, but they got caught in that situation because I know the mayor of Asudas, and I sit in different committees with that mayor, and their development happened so fast they didn't have time to go out there and address. They were more focused on new development rather than upkeep of the existing infrastructure that was there. So, and it's a balance. It's a balancing.
So I do understand that, and I do appreciate that explanation. But what I'm asking you is, what does that have to do with the provincial and federal governments? Not their jurisdiction.
I would ask that to the province. Why are we doing that?
You're not a representative. You should be asking that.
We are looking at it,
Yeah.
and the possibility is, well, when let's say a municipality or region of the city gets caught, where do we go? We go to the provincial government for granting.
Right.
We go and ask them for funds. We like get down, not necessarily in our hands and knees, but we ask them for funds, and they want to prevent it. That's my version.
Yeah. So that funds is also all of our.
Provincial taxes, I mean, we pay them as well.
No, I know you feel like we're making our news, but we're not pushing back, but we're really, you are the people who have to push back.
Well, in this case, an asset management plan is a good idea, generally accepted. So it's not that, it's just the focus on it has come from, the Canadian Federation of Municipalities and both its provincial counterpart, and a lot of work has been done on develop templates and plans to bring this into place.
Yeah, I really, I'm sorry for like that, and I'll let you go on, but really need to be asking yourself, why is the federal provincial government so interested in, and like, you know, you hear lots of things from lots of different people. It would be really awesome. We had the feeling that you asked them. Even.
And that's a great question. And that might actually come from local municipalities who are telling the provincial government, we need some guidance and policy on this, right? And then they come back and they give it back to us. So again, that's my sort of interpretation. It doesn't mean that somebody sitting in Victoria and saying this could very well be coming. Pardon, sorry.
It's coming from way higher up. Like, that's why this is a cost candidate thing. There's similar pushes to get control of all the assets in all the cities across the world, not just here.
Yeah.
Right, so we need to really be thinking that.
But then when you take a look at it, does it not make sense? If you've got a water pipe that's been in there for 30 years, and should you not be saving money to replace it rather than going back to your residents and taxing them for replacement of that water?
Okay.
It does make sense.
Of course, you need to do this thing as part of
Yes.
responsible running a city or a business or a corporation, right? So I'm pretty sure that you as the RDCK are being acting responsibly already.
So what he's saying is, why are you guys getting somebody to pay $100,000 to be dealing with this stuff? But it's kind of common sense. There's already these resources out there, and you know that the water pipe's 30 years old. So would that not make common sense to maybe put some of that $100,000 into some of those areas instead of paying someone to go around and be going, the water pipe's 30 years old.
Yeah.
It's pretty much common sense.
It's a little more complicated than asset management is a fairly complex and complicated process. It might sound simple. There's a 30-year-old pipe, we could do that, but you've got to have a process to pick priorities, how much you're going to fund ahead of time. It's not yeah.
Why don't you guys have the expertise to do this?
We have to hire more employees, which nobody wants. Anyway, that was a simple action. That's up to the
In your conversations with the elected employees, you know, Walter, you notice feedback here for the budget, and even if you're getting it as grants, you're paying for it too.
Absolutely. I'm a taxpayer also.
Yeah, of course. And so we just asked that, you know, we really asked, why all of a sudden this sudden interest from the federal government to do this? Really asked a critical question. And that's, I think, the point why people are uncomfortable with it. We just want to know that you're asking those questions. That's it.
Repeat your point. Thank you. Now we'll go to Lawrence. Go ahead.
Where do these 15-minute cities come into play?
I can't answer that. We're dealing with the budget, Lawrence. The 15-minute cities really are, it's not we're not a city, it's a regional district. We have no control over 15-minute cities or whatever. And we're not trying to establish 15-minute cities within area H, period. The rural area.
An example of part of the 15-minute city plan is a park.
Nothing to do with 15-minute cities.
Bought a piece of property for a park.
The park was at the request of the rest. Any service that we have in area H, other than the mandated services that are there, are at the request of the residents. And as a director, I respond to requests of the residents. It's not me that goes out there and says, hey, you shall have this service, unless it's mandated by the province or by the federal government. So if people request they want a park, I go out and respond to the request of the people and purchase that park. And by the way, the purchase price of that park did not cost the red cent to our taxpayers.
I was going to say, that was 100% funded for our community. So, and this was prevented all in that. So we did have, some 55 to 80 homes in that area, which would drive up our taxes even more.
I live in the school as well.
Okay, so if you want to have a conversation between the two of you, that's fine, but do it somewhere else. Let's continue with the budget. So has anybody got any further questions so far on the budget?
But I do have a suggestion. If you're going to hire people, make sure they have proper expertise because they really live out nature.
I depend on staff and they hire people to look at their qualifications and everything else. And
They did some improvements, but they destroyed things that were take decades to grow. That good.
My statement or question is kind of based on, some of the things that we're discussed here, and that is that, government services tend to go. That's just been historically developed. Federal government is downloading under control, provincial government downloading device. This is where the buck stops, right here in this development. And you're considering the equation, you have to consider where the money is coming from. All of that money is coming from people, perhaps. And I believe the RDCK budget, I read it all, something like $16 million. So what I think is that we don't want to see these costs continue to grow. We can't work with CPI or anything like that. See providing our diminishing steadily, but taxes continue to grow. Part of it is because they continue to grow because you're doing more and more services. I think you really have to start out down the validity of a lot of these expenditures. And yeah, we need to start looking at this more like a business and the way that we operate a little brand new fire trucks and $100. But for decades, it was common for the big cities to pander that they're putting down to smaller and smaller places. And so that an area like this doesn't need $1 million brand new fire truck. And I'm well aware that a fire truck is fully usable until it hits 25 years. And all of a sudden, $1 million fire truck is worth $10,000 less. So what I'm saying is that, you know, if we're talking to people about how we'd like to see this pie divvied up, it might be considering things like the asset. Why wouldn't the whole mile fire truck from Surrey or Kelowna be perfectly good? And it's just those things. One, in every aspect, you look at this, somebody mentioned bus fares. I took an RBCK transit bus from Castle to Nelson a little while ago, it's only $2.50. I kind of was taken back, and I expected to pay about something at $10 to be valuable. But those little things, when we consider them all, where we could actually probably see a reduction in our taxes. You know, the property doesn't make much difference. It's the mill rate and decline, it's the overall cost of the services. And I look at all the services that are doing. I sympathize with people that cannot use those services because they're low, or they can't get them. So maybe we need to look at this thing a little bit closer and start talking about which services are essential, which are not. Which ones, apply to certain groups, but don't apply fairly to others. For example, I would use that as a golf course. We would expect to pay a membership golf course. Users would pay for that. We're not looking for all the taxpayers to pay for that. But we fund skiers, which is going to be a very small percentage. People use that sort of inspiring. We let them pay for themselves. They're fairly awesome group. Anyway, that's what I'm sensing in all discussions I hear from all over every age is that people are really starting to get dissatisfied with the escalating cost and questioning the value of the services. And it doesn't need to be personal or anything. Maybe we just don't need as many people. Or like I was mentioning in this places. Can't we have some voluntary committees that would have the expertise in their communities, not cost here in the age?
Okay, point well taken. I don't have an answer for you. And I hope you're not expecting me to answer. But we are looking at that to a certain degree. Services were established at SAPTA, and we talked about how we eliminate that service that was established. we are also governed by the community charter and the local government act, so we'll have to comply. And I'm far from an expert on that act. So, we are looking at that. I would say the directors are concerned about that. We have 11 directors on the board and whatever. And yeah, we are trying to look at possibilities of reducing costs. But when we provide a service, they can provide a good service, not a service that's not considered that great. So I do have a question in the back. Go ahead.
What surprised me most of the board? If there's no,
Yes.
so in the last 3 years, and when I was being double, and when the increase in the profit was double. So I was not going to take it, and everybody here is not as being, probably their government. But I haven't seen any changes made that.
We're getting a little bit misdirected. We have a certain amount of time to go over the budget, and if we don't finish the budget here, we could be here for quite a while. And, I do have an answer for you on the landfills, et cetera, but again, that'll generate more questions, and we could be stuck on that for the next half hour or so talking about that. But I'll be glad to stay back and talk to you about what the landfills after we finish our budget presentation, or anybody else that wants to stay out. Go ahead.
Okay, we'll do that. Just one comment on landfills, and I talked a bit about there's committee and commission meetings. So if somebody really wanted to know how a service worked and all of the discussions around it, the budget setting, those committee meetings are all public. You can join online or come to Nelson, and you'll learn more about landfills and transfer stations than you ever want to know. If you sat in on the budget for the each sub-region, so there's 3 sub-regions for resource recovery. It's about 120 lines long. The manager goes through every line, explains every single line to detail, with all kinds of notes. The directors ask questions, make some challenges. There's some changes made. So that's really not something we can explain in 5 or 10 minutes when it takes a 3-hour meeting to go through that budget to that detail. So those committee meetings are public, and if somebody's interested, whether it's in waste or recreation or other services, they can attend those meetings and see what the conversation is and what's driving those budgets.
Thank you.
Just a bit about strategic plan alignments. So the new strategic plan will help guide initiatives and projects, including effectiveness, efficiency of operations, transparency and engagement with the public, which these meetings are about, and other public meetings, continual focus on the core services, waste, recreation, and fire, and then also managing the assets and service delivery in a fiscally responsible manner, which goes back to the asset management plan project we're working on. So I'll just go through the various services that residents in the area, H and Slocan participate in. So that's 100 general administration. So that's corporate admin, finance, IT, human resources, CAO, and municipal directors. There's, the wage increase we talked about, CRA mileage rates increased, some training opportunities. Another thing that's really hitting our budgets hard is IT. And so one example, the regional district has been using Microsoft Office 2016 for about 8 years now. So 8 years ago, we went and bought a bunch of licenses, and you buy it for $500, use it over, for a user, use it over 8 years. Well, that's 40 some odd dollars per year. Well, that's completely changed. Microsoft said we're stopping, we're no longer supporting that product. you're vulnerable to cybersecurity weaknesses and all those sort of things. And your only option is to go to Microsoft 365, which is an online subscription services. So going from basically something that we've been paying about $40 per user over a year is now ballooned up to about $500 per user, which is adding $250,000 to our annual costs. So we did a fairly thorough analysis, looked at all the options, and went through all the licensing and everything. And that's basically where it ends up. And on top of that, you've got the cost to implement it and do all those changes and training. And so it's not just Microsoft 365, that's happening with almost all of our software. The owners or the companies that provide the software, see that this is how we're going to make money. So almost any piece of software we own now is the cost of it are going up fairly significantly. So we do look at our options, and if there's an opportunity to move somewhere else, but they're basically moving in lockstep. And then part of that as well is cybersecurity is an ever-increasing threat. So the cost to keep up and to maintain the security of the digital assets and information and IT services is increasing. So a new website's been in the works for a bit now. So the board approved a $70,000 to complete it last year. So that project is done this year. So just for improved user access. And so overall, in general, the year-over-year taxation increase is 11%. So S1, question?
Very good question.
Sure.
The GIS stuff.
No, it's in a separate thing. So rural admin. So this is basically rural directors, regional fire services, overhead and bylaw services. So the same CPI increase. Good news story is we've been successful in getting a $474,000 fire training grant that supports firefighter and staff wages, equipment, and other training costs. So that's in this budget. And so there's a 15% total increase in requisitions, mainly driven by full staffing complement in both bylaw and fire services. And so there's also 75,000 for a vehicle to be funded from reserves.
Vehicle.
Yes, from reserves. So there's our regional fire, one of the vehicles I believe is over 12 years old, and so it's quite a replacement. So quickly go through some of the other services. So building inspection. So the permit revenues come down quite a bit from a couple of years ago, and we're not forecasting an increase over last year. So even though the number of permits increased, the total values come down, so that's affecting reducing revenue. And so we're also updating our building permit applications fees. So that's happened. And onboarding new staff. There's been a fair amount of turnover. So this is one of the departments we've seen a fair number of turnover in the last several years. That's affected service. So building inspectors have left for better paying jobs where they don't have to travel as much. And they've been stretched really thin. Because of that, one leaves, all of a sudden everybody else has to pick it up. So now we're at a full staffing complement. And also we're digitizing historical permits. That project's underway. Planning basically stable and on budget. And so there's some provincial legislation that's driving some of that work and the number of projects that are listed up there. So GIS, so relatively minor, I think 2% increase in taxation. Operations are stable, so it's continuing to establish new funding models for internal and external projects, and looking for opportunities to advance technology. The local conservation area H joined last year.
Yes.
Yeah, so Area F is joining this year. So we're looking at establishing the local compensation fund committee. And so $130,000 was awarded for 8 projects in 2024.
Okay, so my correct, it's only going to be $15 per year
Per parcel.
per parcel.
Yeah.
So why is there extra, you know, I know it's small change and everything, but why isn't it just for my bill, why isn't it just plain old $15? Why is there extra money? Can I show you that?
Yeah, that'd be- Sure, yeah, I'd like to see that. And we'll get back to you.
So can you explain the conservation purposes of donation thing? Is that what this is? Like, when it showed up on my bill, and I agree with this lady here, my amount isn't $15, it's $15. So anyways, I didn't understand, like, I didn't have it, and what is the conservation fund? So is this an item that RDCK chooses to grant money to certain groups? Is this a taxation type thing or like a tax exempt thing?
What a conservation fund is, and we did a referendum on that. And majority of the residents in Area East supported the $15 per parcel for conservation. And it is conservation of our areas that are delicate, our ecosystems, et cetera. There is a bunch of professionals that look at it. And this year, most of the projects are being done in Area H. But
This is a particular point I wanted to ask some questions on. I actually have done it in different forms to get to the market. And I'm hoping that also done a lot of homework with the administrative municipal affairs and looked at the act. And so if I can, I will read it for the benefit of everybody and choose to comment and maybe answer it later. That'd be okay.
yeah, we can do that later, so.
Later.
Yeah, we still don't have my job on the top of it.
For conservation fund, which is lands.
Yeah. So how much more have I told you?
We're a little more than halfway through.
Yeah, we still, and we've been at it for almost 2 hours. So can you defer that till the end and I'll be glad to answer your questions.
Yeah, and I would hope that maybe everybody can have access to the answers. And certainly I don't find a copy of this.
Yeah, we had a referendum on that.
There's a lot of questions to be asked about that.
Yeah, so if you can pass that on to Walter, and then if there's sort of legal or process related questions, then we can get our corporate administration department to look at that. Okay. So community sustainability is one of the other services. So it deals with projects relating to protection of drinking water, watersheds, various partnerships. The climate action is part of this service as well. So there was, over the last year, there was the additional.
Excuse me,
Yes.
what's climate action?
Yes.
What's the climate action? There'd be no climate action that's approved by the board.
No, sorry, it's the initiative. So the plan has not been approved, but there was the meetings, the public engagement meetings that were held last year. So all that input is being incorporated into a future plan.
Yeah, this is budget, so you're budgeting in stuff from the climate action that's nothing to do.
No, we're budgeting in the process to work on the climate action plan.
What plan action?
So what climate action?
So what kind of action?
Honestly, like, you be told all along, it's not for real, it's not something that's there, the directors are gonna vote on it, no states in the budget.
Yes,
How can something be in the budget that's not real?
it's being worked on. That's why it's in the budget. And it requires staff time to be worked on. That's why it's in the budget.
So
At the request of the residents that there was not enough consultation done, we went to public meetings, et cetera. So as a result of the public meetings, we've got so much information there. We have to go through that information. We rely on our staff to go through that information, and the staff has to get paid.
Okay, so they're specifically doing work on the climate action plan for water, drinking water and water.
No, those are separate initiatives.
Oh, okay,
So there's,
you know what, my apologies, I thought they were on the same slide, so.
yeah, no, those, yeah, separate initiatives.
So what are the partnerships? What's that? Partnership with who?
You
Like Slocan
speak to
Lake.
those about the Slocan
Would be
Lake.
like,
Well, Slocan Lake and River Partnership, it is an initiative, we've only allocated $5,000 towards that. And that is, we've got two stewardship groups, the Slocan River, keepers or whatever, the Slocan River, and we've got the Slocan Lake, group there too.
so that's
what
the
we're-
partnership.
So, let me finish it, if I may. Is what we're doing is a lot of developments happening in Area H. People are building right beside the river, beside the lake. They're putting in drawings and they are destroying the fish habitat, etc. So what we developed is, and a lot of that stuff is not under regulation of the regional district. So the partnership is to involve the provincial government, who has jurisdiction on lakeshore and river frontage properties, the federal government, who has jurisdiction over the water, and the municipal government, where we have development permit areas where there are sensitive habitats that you'll destroy something, you can put in a development in. And then we involve the First Nation. That's the partnership. We meet together and we still are having work on what would be the responsibilities of that partnership. So that's the partnership.
Is there any regional district to get involved? It's already three other levels. So they're pressing.
They're not. That's why we're getting involved.
Why didn't you tell them?
Yeah, we did. No result. So we develop a partnership and we all agree to it, and then we can maybe have something happen. Okay, let's go on.
All right. So there's a few other initiatives related to food and agriculture and energy. So emergency management is one of these other services that's that is growing, and so basically it's responsible for planning, preparation for potential of seasonal planning, wildfires, and drought. As you may or may not be aware, there's a new Emergency Disaster Management Act that's coming into play. So it's going to guide or dictate in some areas our emergency plan for risk management, coordination, and consultation, required update of bylaws, policies, and procedure documents. So a fair bit of work involved on that. There's a neighborhood emergency preparedness program, ongoing fire smart and neighborhood recognition programs, including free home assessment, homeowner rebates. Some of these initiatives are grant funded, so they're not funded through local taxation. And then also the community wildfire resilience plans. Okay, so West Resource Recovery. So this is basically waste, recycling, and organics. So the West is basically Council-Dar areas, HIJK, and through the Slocan Valley and up to Nakuz. So 4% increase in taxation, 10% increase to tipping fees. There's a number of legacy landfill assessments that have to be done on legacy landfills that even some predate the regional district, but the regional district is responsible for. Some assessments in Ushania and Nakuz, and also a design, operations and closure plan for the Ushania landfill, and some transfer station upgrades in Slocan, Roseberry, and the customer plan for this year.
How about having a moratorium, a couple of moratorium days so people just don't dump things in the woods? That would be nice, because, you're raising the rates, and so people would rather just drive up, walk around and dump stuff. Moratorium days where people can not destroy our forest.
So, yeah, no, it's a good question, and if you look at the balance, I mean, really, it's how about people don't go dump things in the forest, is really what it should be.
But when you raise them, it's the goes with that.
Right, so then, yeah, and it becomes this balance of, what's how much should it be a user pay system versus a, driven by taxpayers? So if we have those moratorium days, then the taxation would have to increase. Right, so somebody has to pay for waste management services, one way or another. So it's either gonna be paid through taxation or through user fees. So
In Surrey, they have a day where people can put stuff out by their road and people can ride around and get whatever they want off of there. And then the city does give them moratorium days so that they pick up the rest of the junk.
Right.
And then we don't have garbage everywhere.
Then everybody's gonna be paying for them to drive around picking up all this stuff, even if somebody like myself deals with my own stuff. And I don't wanna have to pay for somebody else to come along and pick up all this stuff up the valley when it's gonna be cheaper for me to pay for it. But I understand what you're saying.
yeah, it's one of those tensions between user pay and everybody pay, right? So we've been trying to strike that balance, and there are, I'll give one more example. So East Kootenay, the East Kootenay Regional District, it's 100% taxation funded. They have no user fees. Guess what? People still drive up and throw their garbage in the forest. They still have that problem there, even though if you go to the transfer station, you don't pay anything. For some odd reason, people are still dumping stuff in their forest in the East Kootenay. They have the same problem, maybe not the same level we do. They have that same problem.
Yes, right. Is the old, same base, could be considered there for dumping, sort of, could be made that way?
It's a good question. I'm not sure whether that's a provincial jurisdiction, whether, if it's in the forest, I guess it's the Ministry of Forest or maybe conservation would look after that. And so there are fines. I'm not aware of anybody actually getting fined on that or what the process is, because you have to be able to identify who dumped that garbage and go through that process. So the regional district, I don't think goes out and does that bit.
No, we don't. If we did, we would have to increase your taxation to establish a bylaw officer to go out and police crown land, which is actually a provincial responsibility, and that's called town voting. We don't.
Okay, next one. So recreation related to Slocan Area H, so 3 various services. Some of these are just Area H. So some work on the Cristobal Park. Assessment, looking at some signage. The old schoolhouse demolition, as many are aware, was completed last year. And so this is moving from rec service to rec and park service. Looking at continued development of the various parks, fields, and the old schoolhouse property. So this work is being funded for Cristobal and the old schoolhouse by Area H community development grants and capital reserve contributions. And Recreation North is for the area north of Slocan, so we'll skip over that.
The other you had said that this is one area, the science fire, where there's huge increases. Is that correct? The recommendation?
Yes.
Okay, so what if not, people in Wimmera that don't have vehicles or whatever don't use these recommendations? Is that spread all over the, isn't that a global kind of an RDCK cost?
So I'll just give you an example. We pay a school tax I don't have any children at school. Why should I pay a school tax? But that's what we do. And all our services that we have, other than mandated services by the province or by the federal government, are done through a referendum. So a referendum is done that we pay for our park services. So like I mentioned, the Bristol Park, there was no, actually, there was no taxation to get that park. But now that we've got the park, we have to maintain it. We have to look after it. And, the plan is not to go out there and start doing anything right away with it, keep it natural. And this is why we're having that assessment, an ecological assessment, to take a look and protect the eco-sensitive areas within that park. And there are eco-sensitive areas.
Oh, Inland Nature Park had a lot of eco-sensitive area that got destroyed. There used to be tons of wild ginger in there. Yew trees that got to be over 100 years old, if not 200 years old. Asked, and what maintenance are they going to continue doing there?
So we do have a commission, the Inland Park Commission. They make the decisions what happens within that park. And they are volunteers from the Inland area. And the chair of that commission is Craig Lawrence. So that's a good question to put to him. Why did they destroy all of that? What you mentioned. Oh.
Education and recreation are kind of two very different things. The guy that went to school, and education is essential. But recreation, really should be one of the things to remove a small percentage of the constituents. There has to be some responsibility and control for volunteers, the things that they can do without it done. And I don't think it's a different person.
Well, that's your opinion. But what happens is, to have a healthy person, whatever, that you should be able to exercise and go through. That's another opinion. Like I mentioned, all of those services that were established were done through a referendum. Park service was just done through, the rec service was done through a referendum. So it's there.
I want to say I'm a big advocate for the community. And I can only see that because we see what's happening people around here. With the tracks and the lot of them. And their children, and it isn't a chance like that all over there, yes. So I do advocate. I think I really want today and create that healthy, we want healthy communities. I understand what you're saying. We can't pay the living numbers, but it's stuff that is stuff that is getting. Let's hang on to it and make it good.
Let's continue.
Okay, so the various parks, this is all through Area H. So the two specific to this area, the Winlaw Nature Parks and continued maintenance, Crescent Valley Beach, looking at building a pathway to the lower park and beach area, and as well as continued dog control and their escape work this year. Oh, is Joe, are you trying to speak?
No, just trying to hear.
Okay. All right, thank you, Joe.
Yeah, but
Okay,
Walter and Jess, you guys might want to know the sound is really terrible online.
Okay, not sure what I can do about that now.
Say something like owl.
You've got the owl here, so it should be good.
Through the chart, I just think that it's when people, if you're not talking, particularly Walter, and if you're talking to the crowd, I don't know where the owl is, but it does seem to cut in and cut out. Like right now, it was actually quite good. I don't know why.
Okay.
Because
All right,
we're looking at the owl.
it's right in front of us, so I'll try to speak towards the owl more.
Sorry,
Thank you.
you guys sound good. It's the public in the room that we can't hear the questions of. So you guys sound fine. It's, you can't hear what people are asking.
Right, yeah, we've got some of the public about 30, 35 feet away from the owls, so we've got a fairly healthy contingent here this evening.
Is there a microphone help?
Well, yeah, no, there's a microphone in that owl, but its range is limited at about 25 feet. Okay, so the growth in parks, so this speaks to a bit about the growth in regional district parks going back to way back, I guess, to the 70s. And so each one of those more vertical areas shows a acquisition of a smaller to larger parks. So the last large move up, so this is in hectares, was the Cristobal Park in 2022. So we'll jump a bit over to water utility services. So these services, there's a very small portion of the area that participates in them. So these users are either mostly funded through either parcel taxes or user fees. So we've got the South Slocan water utility. That has a 7% user fee increase, but a decrease in the parcel tax. And as well, the Roseberry water system, there's a proposed, that'll be a tomorrow's meeting, 50% user increase.
Can I just?
Sure.
Here, just, thank you for this help. A lot of legal questions here. I'm far from a legal expert, so I'll forward this to staff. Hopefully they'll can provide you some answers.
Yeah, I've asked. Appreciate that.
Okay, thanks, Al. Okay.
Okay. All right, so fire services. So we have a regional fire part of the fire service. So they look after the management of service, the overarching safety policy governance as required by the Office of the Fire Commissioner and Work Safe BC, management of the major capital projects, group purchasing. And as mentioned earlier, there's been significant taxation savings by use of various grant sources, including that PBCM training fund, as well as the Growing Communities Fund. So the fire protection service for the area in Slocan is 4 fire halls. So it's one of the largest of the regional parts of most people's tax, for 40 to 55%. So overall, there's about a 6% or 7% tax requisition increase over 2023. So a lot of this is driven to cost pressure due to regulations for asset replacement, as well as increased financing rates. Just going back a bit, and we'll address that momentarily, the discussion about buying new truck versus old. So as much as possible, when we go to buy new trucks requiring replacement, we go out there and look and see if anything's available within that timeline that meets the needs. So I believe Crescent Valley's received, is that correct, Walter? It's purchased a used truck. And the thing is, the price of used trucks, just as used cars, has gone way up as well. So now a used truck that's only got 10 years left in it is $300,000 or $400,000 versus 4 years ago, that's what bought you a brand new truck. So a truck that's $10,000 or $50,000 is basically a truck that's beyond its usable life now. So I believe Weimer and one other departments recently, we've also bought used trucks for. There is some risk involved in that. Yes.
I just wanted to bring this up because I think it's another case of where we need to be pointed out for us with senior government.
Yeah.
How can the 24-year-old truck that's 24 years old and 64 days old be perfectly certifiable and perfectly functional? Then the next day it isn't.
Yeah.
That's the deal.
Yeah, it's a great question, and as a regional district, we are pushing back both the provincial government and the fire underwriters, so basically that's an insurance, more or less an insurance-driven requirement. So we're lobbying as much as possible, but at a certain date, doesn't matter how old a truck is, at some point, if something's 30 years old, whatever the number is, it's not going to be suitable for use. So is 20 years too short? Probably, but we can do the 5-year extension. How far we go beyond that is anybody's guess right now. So we are, as a regional district, are lobbying for potential extensions beyond.
Maybe what you put down hard on that, because it just doesn't make sense. There's a whole bunch of bureaucracy around maintaining things like vehicles and keeping them certified. Those are the experts that are determining that, and the age of the equipment isn't too relevant to maintenance. It's just unreasonable.
The simple answer, Al, is we are looking at it, but it's the insurance companies that are driving that. They say 25 years, and the guy will do it over 5 years.
It's 20 plus 5.
Yeah, and then what happens is we have tried to purchase used trucks, and depending where you purchase it, if you think it's a good truck, you bring it down here, you take a look, the fittings are not the same, do not match our fittings. Their fittings all over Canada are not standardized, so then we have to replace them and find out all we get is 10 years life out of that truck, and we spent a lot of money retrofitting it to accommodate our fittings. And it's become not really worth it in some instances. Like in Crescent Valley, it is working okay. We were able to purchase a truck that had similar fittings that were required, but not in all cases. And the availability of them is not always there.
The problem is the ones responsible for setting insurance rules and regulations, and when they didn't like how private insurance was servicing people, and they formed ICBC. So they're out there. They have the ability to control the insurance companies if they want to. They're not going to do it. Down with the because.
Point well taken.
Okay, so where were we here? So yeah, there's that cost pressure. So the exhaust extraction systems for the 4 halls is complete. Again, that was something driven by WorkSafe BC. Some energy upgrades funded through community works grants. So community works grants are basically through the federal government, through used to be the natural gas grants. And then also, again, focus on training to meet the Office of Fire Commissioner requirements. So we'll go through the various halls, same story, most of them. So continuing multi-year replacement of protective equipment, including SCBA equipment. So Crescent Valley, we're still completing the purchase of that equipment and the payments for it. Passmore, some maintenance on some equipment, again, multi-year replacement. Same with Winlaw, and then also in preparation for that replacement engine in 2025, which was part of the, I guess, the approval process last year, the referendum.
So with the equipment you replace, the personal protective equipment or firefighting equipment, can the public go and purchase any of that?
The used equipment?
Yeah.
I'm not sure of that. What
Neither
happens.
one.
I'm not sure. There might be some liability reasons, or I'm not sure. And similar Slocan, so replacement of self-contained breathing apparatus, loan payments for the purchase of capital assets, but that applies across the region, and continuing the, again, multi-year replacement of the firefighting equipment. Emergency 911. So the regional district looks after the taxation and the procurement of the 911 services for all the rural areas and most of the, not all the smaller municipalities. So basically, there's two main services that the regional district contracts. One is the 911, so we phone 911. That's the initial dispatch, so that's through the South Okanagan Dispatch Center. So that contract annual rate is increased from 80,000 to 115. And then if it's a fire dispatch, that goes up to the regional district of Fraser Fort George, and that contract is also increased from 273 to 297. So those are primarily driving the increase in those rates. There's some purchases of software, and then $45,000 to integrate the next generation 911, but that's grant funded. One thing to note about emergency 911, besides taxation, the other revenue source has been the 911 fee that's levied on landlines. So as less and less people have landlines, there's less revenue available from that 911 fee. It's not levied on cell phones. There's been a push from many local governments to have that change, but that's under federal jurisdiction. So right now we don't see that changing, but we do see a reduction in the revenue we receive from TELUS for that 911 levy. That we expect that to continue.
I actually called, I was at the meeting on Thursday. I called a federal member of parliament, actually received them with the budget, so we've all been talking about it. There's some indication that this had some involvement with the CRTC, and I know he worked in the Industry and Communications Canada. And he told me that it had nothing to do with the CRTC, it's the way the region has negotiated the contracts. So it's up to the region to negotiate contracts, has nothing to do with the federal government. You know, it's between you and the negotiation that the region has their own reason. So I just want to let you know, it is something that's under your purview to do.
Can you clarify that? It's up to the to negotiate with whom?
Well, it was intimated at the budget meeting. Somebody asked the question that
Well, there's at least 8 or 10 mobile providers in Canada. I can't see each regional district, each municipality, literally hundreds across Canada, negotiating with 10 different mobile. It doesn't make sense that it's up to the region to do that.
So during that Thursday meeting, somebody said it had something to do with being involved in the CRTC. So that's why I took it upon myself from the parliament to tell them, listen, you need to get the CRTC to get involved. And the MP said to me, well, the CRTC can't get involved because it's between the regions and the carriers. So I'm just letting you know about that.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
It is something, never heard of that.
Yeah, he told me he's expecting to get, because I told him about it, he's expecting all kinds of municipalities to call him buttermilk.
Right, yeah, I don't see us phoning Bell Canada and saying, hey, give us some money. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah, and so somebody had said that the CRTC is gonna have to push them. So I called my member of parliament and told him the CRTC to push them. I'm kind of helping you out. And he told me, well, the CRTC has nothing to do with it.
So obviously you don't want us to call your member of parliament.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
From what I understand, it's a federal, whether it's CRTC or it's a federal government doing something. Anyway. Okay. And let's the transit. So the Slocan RH participate in a couple of transit services, Cooney Lake West, which is service 239, is going to use $100,000 of your reserves to offset increase in operating costs, which will reduce the requisition of that service. In 238, which H and Slocan also participate in, there's a 20% increase in operation costs. A lot of that, in both driven to service expansion. So the regional district contracts with the BC Transit to provide those services, and the BC Transit contracts the service providers. So we don't negotiate those ourselves, those agreements. The Transit BC, BC Transit does that, and then we pay those contract rates. So overall, in aggregate, when you combine the two services across the areas, Slocan and Area H, you'll see, so that doesn't, those dollar amounts are the cost to those areas. So a 7 to 9% increase in transit services, the Denver Silverton will see a decrease. The other initiative going on in this area, the slide doesn't talk about it, is there's 3 or 4 transit services in the West Cooney area that all crisscross each other, and there's buses that crisscross the services. That's why Area H is in 2 different services with 2 different names. So there's an initiative at the board table, and it's being worked on this year, is to, and the apportionment formula is very complex, is to combine it all in one service and to come up with a apportionment formula across all the electoral areas and municipalities that's a little more transparent and easier to understand. So there may be a shift in 2025 and coming years, probably, hopefully a reduction to one service and an assessment or a formula that is clearer and easier to understand. Okay, so we're down to the last couple of slides. So these are basically pie charts that show where the average tax bill goes in that area. And so the dollar numbers to the left are based on per $250,000 of home value. So if your home's worth 500, then you double it. If it's 750, you triple it, or if it's in between, the math's a little more complicated. But anyway, so as you can see, in the village of Slocan, for their property tax, their regional district portion of it, most of it is related to the fire protection services, more than half, about 60%. And then the rest of it is, the other major ones are the next larger ones are refuse, the regional park service, and the transit service, which may, in combination, make up about almost 85 or 90% of the tax bill for the property owners in the village of Slocan. And Area H tax bill, so lots of services, a lot of smaller ones, but about 45%. Again, is for those in fire service, 45% of your tax is related to fire protection. And then after that, we've got recreation, transit, general admin, and refuse, making up the bulk of the other services. So that is the last slide in the presentation. So are there any questions on this slide or any other questions?
What is next generation 911? What is that?
So was a change. So the old 911 was what we call an analog service. So next generation moved to a digital service. So it's like going from having an old school modem in your house to having fiber optic digital internet. So it's a modernized, modernizing the equipment and making the service more reliable.
So I'm getting it is digital off the phone line?
Yeah, so the equipment to connect to the dispatch centers is digital based versus analog based. So that's my understanding of it. I can't get more technical.
After a part of the meeting, we learned about some proposed changes related to garbage pickup. Yeah, I don't remember seeing that in this presentation. I don't know if everybody knows about it.
Okay, so, yeah,
Because there was a big expenses.
There is gonna be a referendum, that's why it's not in the budget.
I understand.
We can't tax for it till it's approved by the residents.
Okay, awesome. Okay, thank you.
So there is gonna be a referendum on it, and just to, people figure it's gonna be organics only. It's organics, recycling, and garbage, or refuse.
And when is that going to be?
So the referendum is gonna be coming out, it's gonna be advertised in the Valley Voice, I can't give you an exact date, it will not include Crestover. There is a map associated with that, it's on the Regional District website. That information, I believe, is currently on the Regional District website. You go under Environmental Services, you'll find that information about the referendum. It's basically it's combined with Area F and Area H. And the Area H portion will be from the village of South Slocan, including Claymore Junction, and along the highway, all the way through to the Tassmer Fire. It will not go across the river. Only, I think there's a portion of it that will go across the river, but the map's there.
So then I have a question. If we are up and included in FOA and this gets passed, are we still going to be working some of that bill?
No, the referendum is for the defined area. The map defines the area that will be taxed.
So it's not.
Since-
Perfect, thank you. Well, it's not-
As to go to the referendum.
Thank you.
That is for garbage pickup. So there are people that now use a private contractor to pick up garbage. But this will include your organics and your recyclables. The bigger recyclables will still be at Crescent Valley.
Can I comment as well that the defined area is based on I have from that staff is able to say, okay, so yes, they're able to know it's here, but there is. So that's why I don't think.
Just wondering in the future, because I know you can't answer this question, I'm wondering how AI would provide in cost savings in the next several years, particularly in the areas of administration.
Great question.
Don't want AI doing that.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for. No, there's certainly potential, for AI. I mean, my personal take on it, in 3 or 5 years, things are gonna, we can't imagine how they're gonna change, or we can't imagine how it's gonna change, but I believe there's gonna be systems that are gonna bring efficiencies, but now instead of paying people to do those things, you're gonna pay somebody, AI, to do it. So does that mean there's gonna be a reduction in taxes? Not necessarily, right? It might be, you might end up in the same place.
Might be another $600 a month.
It might be another 6. Well, and that's what it is. So Microsoft's AI tool is $45 a month per user. Today. Yeah, per user. So we're not gonna, yeah. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, so AI is coming. What it's gonna look like, we can only imagine at this point in time.
It'd be a horror show.
It could very well, yes.
If I help you get a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
So any further questions on the budget? So yeah, was gonna back up and leave. I'll hang around if anybody wants to talk to me or answer any questions. I'll do my best to answer the questions that somebody has, but otherwise I'm gonna go home and have a long day.
Thank you for your time. You guys.
Yeah. Biggest legal questions, is that pertain, the legal questions you have, will that be pertaining to all of us in some form?
Maggie, I'll be published for your question.
Okay.
All for
Oh, that's not happening. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, everyone, for attending.
I get that too. Oh, I have our third voice like come with it.
Hi, Lawrence. Hi, how are you? How are you? Good. Seen you for about, 20 years.